Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back, and it is now time to begin our second lesson in this Diploma in English for Business, guys. Okay, so I know there is a lot of new people joining us tonight who did not get to join me on lesson one. So I'm delighted to see an increase in the students attending live today. So welcome to all of those new students. You have taken your first steps to success. You are taking control, okay? You are upskilling yourself by taking this course. You are adding value, and the best way to do it is through the live lessons, guys. So really, it's great to see all of you attending live. Now, for those of you who were not here, and for those of you who just want a recap of what we covered in lesson one, first of all, we looked at us, which is of course the Shaw Academy and the team. We looked at the course agenda, so what we will be learning over these 4 weeks. We looked at the members area and community, and we looked at the course engagement. Now, I'm going to cover a few of these points again now, very quickly, just for those of you who are joining us for your first live lesson. Okay, so first of all, I've already had a lot of people asking how they can watch the recording of lesson one. So guys, like I said in lesson one, all of these live lessons are recorded and they are put into your members area within 24 hours of the live recording. So if you want to catch up on a lesson you missed, or simply just watch a lesson again, then you can log into the Shaw Academy website and go into your English for Business course, and then you can watch the recordings there, okay? So if you miss a lesson or just want to watch one again, that is where you will find them. Now, another thing I would like to mention is that our website has recently been revamped. It's a new website, and you may notice that if you joined me for lesson one live, it may still say in your members area that you missed the first lesson. Do not worry too much about this, okay? It will update itself. It's just taking a bit of time because it's a new website. So don't worry if the members area says that you missed a lesson. We know that you attended live. We keep record of that on a different system, the system that you are all using right now. Okay? Everyone wondering how to engage during the lesson, how to interact with me and the team? Use the question box that you are all typing in right now. That is where you ask questions. That is where you answer questions. You are all muted, okay? So don't worry if you are muted. You're all supposed to be, because if all of the students were talking, we would never get through the lesson, okay? We have a lot of students online, and if all of you were talking, no one would be able to hear me, okay? So that is why you are all muted. If any of you are experiencing problems with the sound, then I would recommend logging out and logging back in, and that usually fixes the problem. We would always recommend to use Google Chrome or Firefox. So if you're using Internet Explorer or Safari, sometimes that can affect the sound issues. But if you're not having any sound issues, then don't worry about it. Okay? So, what else did we look at in lesson one? We had an introduction to English for Business. We looked at the fundamentals of business etiquette. In the grammar, we looked at compound nouns and adjectives. We also covered modal verbs. So, what modal verbs did we have? We had have to, must, and should, and the different reasons we used those. Then we looked at forging and fostering professional relationships, okay? And remember, forging and fostering just means creating and developing professional relationships. And all of this was supported with lots of new terminology and my brilliant pronunciation. And already a lot of the new students on today's webinar are asking where I am from. My name is Mark, sorry I should have said, my name is Mark Kennelly and I am from Ireland. So the Shaw Academy is an Irish company. I am doing this lesson from Dublin, Ireland, okay? So if you've never heard an accent like mine, this is an Irish accent and you will get very used to it over the next 3.5 weeks, okay? So again, a big welcome to all the new students and a big welcome back to all the students who were with me in lesson 1. Now, what are we going to cover in today's lesson, guys? You will learn about communication related contexts in the workplace. You will gain confidence and improve your telephone manner. We will learn how to prepare for meetings. In the grammar, we will explore the future tenses and quantifiers. You will hone your conference call techniques. We will explore the first conditional, so another bit of grammar. And then, like every lesson, we will finish with a summary, a look ahead to the next lesson, and a question and answers round. So if this is your first live lesson, any questions that don't get answered during the webinar, I do an extra 10 to 15 minutes at the end to try and answer every question that you guys have. Salma, the meaning of hone means to improve, okay? So to hone your conference call techniques is to improve, to sharpen, okay? But don't worry because we will see that as we go along through the lesson. So, without further ado, let's get started with lesson 2 and our first topic, oral communication. But before we look at oral communication, what is communication? So guys, first chance to answer a question, type it into your question box. What is communication? How would you define communication? So tell me. Okay, Khalid says contact with people. A lot of people saying contact, contacting with others. Okay, interaction, exchanging ideas, trying to reach each other. Okay, interact with people, contact, speak and listen. Okay, so I'm seeing a lot of speaking, I'm seeing a lot of interaction, I'm seeing a lot of contact. So that's very good work, guys. But remember, we're just looking at communication as a whole. So communication involves sending and receiving information. Okay, very simply, in its simplest form, communication involves sending and receiving information. There are, of course, different types of communication. For example, we have verbal communication, which is speaking, or oral communication. So verbal communication and oral communication are the same thing, and that is speaking. Then we've got non-verbal communication. So, what example of non-verbal communication did we have in lesson 1, guys? Who can tell me? Who's the first one to get the answer in? And the first person I saw is Allah with the correct answer there, and it was, of course, bowing. And what country did we say that they would always bow to greet other people? And lots of people, Mub, Emily, Huda, yes, lots of people, Matthias, Iman, writing Japan. Okay, so non-verbal communication means communicating without speaking. Gestures, handshakes, smiling, waving, bowing, okay? These are all forms of non-verbal communication. So, in a professional context, the process of communication should involve reaching a mutual understanding. And what that means, mutual understanding, it means everybody should be satisfied. Not just one person, but all people involved, all parties involved. Communication is extremely important in every organization between management, departments, and employees. Okay, so communication is obviously extremely important. Fatima, a gesture just means something you do with your body. Okay, so like waving, like bowing, like smiling. Now, we've looked at what communication is, but what is oral communication? And we've already looked at it. So oral communication occurs when a message or information is exchanged or communicated verbally. Verbally means it's spoken, okay? So that's oral communication. For example, a face-to-face conversation, a telephone call, a conference call, or a meeting. And they are the topics we are going to cover in tonight's webinar. Telephone calls, conference calls, and meetings. Now, the vast majority of my students, so all of you guys, would be non-native English speakers. So English would not be your first language. And that can cause a lot of problems with oral communication. It can make people very nervous, and it can affect people's confidence when they have to communicate orally. But that is what we are going to fix in this webinar. We're going to improve your confidence, your ability to communicate verbally. Okay? You'll see it's nothing to be afraid of. So, how can you improve your oral communication in a professional environment? Well, we have a lot of tips for you. Focus on and listen to the professionals you are speaking to. Okay? So, a very nice little saying that we have is you've got 2 ears and 1 mouth. So you should be listening twice as much as you're speaking. Okay? So, make sure you are focusing and listening to the person you are speaking to, because you're obviously not going to understand them if you're not even really listening to them. Ahmed saying he's listening to me. That's great news. That's a very good start, Ahmed. Control verbal and non-verbal communication. Okay, so make sure you use them in an appropriate manner. So control them. Make sure you say exactly what you are trying to say. Make sure you're not smiling if you're saying something very serious. Make sure you're not laughing if you're saying something very serious. So control it. Avoid interrupting people. So interrupting someone just means cutting in when they are trying to talk. Okay? Stopping them from talking. So always try to avoid interrupting because it's rude. Show interest in what the other party says. So don't only listen, show interest. You shouldn't have to try this because you should naturally be showing interest. Be confident, empathetic, diplomatic, positive, and encouraging. Now, these are all adjectives. We looked at a lot of these in lesson 1, but don't worry if some of these are new words. I will give you the terminology afterwards. Anticipate the other party's needs. So anticipate means to try figure out what their needs are before they tell you. Okay, because then it will help you to meet their needs. Avoid being judgmental. So if someone has an opinion that you do not necessarily agree with, avoid saying that's wrong or that's stupid. That's what we call being judgmental. You don't want to be judgmental. You want to be diplomatic. And diplomatic means to avoid hurting anyone's feelings. Okay? So that's what we mean by diplomatic. Provide feedback where necessary. Remember, feedback is giving someone your opinion on their performance. You can have good feedback or bad feedback, but feedback is always constructive to help, okay? It's always given with positive intentions. Now, as I said, we always look at the new terminology. So here we go. We're going to see all this new terminology now. If you've purchased the toolkits, then you have all of these in your summary slides, okay? So to hone, like I said, is to improve. Avoid interrupting means avoid speaking when someone else is speaking. A party is another person or people. So there could be two parties involved in a meeting. Empathetic means understanding other individuals. Or a very good idiom that I always use to explain being empathetic is to put yourself in somebody else's shoes, to understand how someone else feels. So, to be empathetic. Diplomatic is to take care how you say something to respect other people. So, making sure not to offend anyone. That's being diplomatic. Encouraging is giving support. Anticipate the other party's needs is to predict or know what they might want. Judgmental is intolerant, not accepting other professionals and their opinions. So like, no, that's wrong, that's stupid, your opinion is stupid. That would be judgmental, which of course we do not do, ever, ever, ever. Feedback is advice about your work performance. And of course, your work performance just means how you work. Okay? So there's your new terminology. If we went through it a little bit quickly, don't worry, because if you've got those toolkits, you'll have it in the summary notes or the webinar slides. But now it's time for a question for all of you. What are confident, empathetic, diplomatic, positive, and encouraging examples of? Okay? Are they examples of verbs, nouns, adjectives, or adverbs? What do we think, guys? Get those answers in your question box. Okay, I see a lot of correct answers coming in. So brilliant work, Monder, Mina, Matai, Amir. Excellent work by everyone. Enas. There's too many people to name out. Dali and Neville, Abdullah. It is, of course, adjectives, okay? They are all examples of adjectives. They can be used to describe, well, in this case, people, okay? So, they are your general tips of oral communication. But now we're going to move into something a little bit more specific. Improving your telephone manner, okay? So how can we improve your telephone manner, guys? And first of all, of course, we've got some tips. Be confident, polite, professional, and articulate, okay? Articulate means to speak clearly and professionally, okay? Articulate. I'll pronounce it again. People already asking about that pronunciation. Articulate, okay? Practice speaking on the phone. Don't avoid it because you are not confident in your own abilities. Practice makes perfect. Always, always, always try and practice as much as possible. And throughout this course, you'll receive phone calls from me or some of my support team, and that is always good practice as well. Prepare a script if necessary. If you are working in a profession where you are constantly making similar phone calls, then don't be afraid to prepare a script to help you remember different lines to say. Be comfortable with silence. Don't try to fill every little gap of silence. Sometimes people need to think about what they have to say, and don't be afraid to give them a chance to do this, okay? And sometimes you may need a chance to think about what to say. So, just be comfortable with silence. Silence is okay sometimes. Answer calls quickly and in a helpful manner. I don't even need to explain that because it's obvious. Of course you should answer calls quickly and in a helpful manner. Use technology and resources to the maximum. So for example, if you have technology to leave automatic voicemails, don't be afraid to use that, because it will mean you can record a perfect voicemail and then use it over and over. So if you have certain technologies and resources, then use them, okay? Now, a little bit of vocabulary here. We had in lesson 1 this word, articulate, and it is a verb to express yourself in a confident and clear manner. So that is the verb articulate. But what about this word that I just mentioned 2 minutes ago? This is an adjective, and that is articulate, and that means to be well spoken or to be a clear communicator. So look, you have 2 words here that are spelt the exact same. One is a verb and one is an adjective. And the main difference with them is the pronunciation, okay? The pronunciation. So listen to this. I will give you an example of the verb. It is my job to articulate the course content to the students. So to express myself in a confident and clear manner. And listen to where the stress is. Articulate. Articulate. The stress is here in the last syllable. Now, what about the adjective? Being an English teacher, Mark is a very articulate person. Okay? Did you hear the different pronunciation there? Articulate. 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 So the stress is here in the second syllable. So, if you've ever wondered the difference between the verb and the adjective, the spelling is the exact same. It's just in how we pronounce it that is slightly different, okay? So, I usually get a lot of questions about that, so that's why I've added it into the lesson to try and cut out these questions and articulate the course content as best I can. Now, what we have next, guys, and what we're going to do in a lot of this lesson is look at some language and phrases to help you in these situations. So, to help you on the phone. So there'll be a lot of examples here and useful phrases, but don't worry, because you can always watch this recording again and again to try and learn off these phrases. Of course, if you've got your toolkit, they're also all included there. So let's begin with introductions on the phone. So very simply, guys, these are just examples of words and phrases and expressions you can use. Hello, good morning, good afternoon. Very simple. This is Mark speaking. Thank you for calling Shaw Academy. Mark speaking. How can I help you, or how may I help you? Could I speak to Mark, please? So these are good examples of expressions that you can use on both ends of the phone. This is Mark. I'm calling from Shaw Academy. Or if you answer the phone, Mark speaking, how can I help you? Could you hold the line, please, or just a moment, please? I will put you through to Mark, or I can transfer you to Mark. Okay? So some useful expressions to use when doing introductions on the phone. Now, as I have said, we know English is not the first language for most of you anyway. So there will be times you have difficulty understanding the other person on the phone. So what can we say if we are having trouble understanding the person on the other end of the phone? And guys, the main thing to remember is do not worry, okay? If you don't understand what someone is saying, don't just let the phone call continue. Say something and let them know that you cannot hear them clearly, you cannot understand them clearly, okay? So let's look at some examples. The line is very bad. Could you speak up, please? So that's a very nice one, because you're not even telling them that you can't understand them. You're just saying, the line is very bad. Could you speak up, please? Could you repeat that, please? Or could you say that again, please? So, for example, guys, if I ring you at any point during this course, which I try to do for a lot of students, don't be afraid to ask me to speak a little slower, ask me to repeat something, ask me to say something again, okay? So just like this, could you speak a little slower, please? Don't be afraid to ask that, okay? So Hajar is saying that you say to the customer that the line is very bad, could you speak slowly or could you repeat? Exactly, Hajar. So that's excellent, just as I've written here. Now, you will of course have to take a message at some point, so let's see some useful phrases for this. Could you ask Mark to return my call, please? Could you tell Mark that I called? I will get Mark to call you back. Can I take a message? Would you like to leave a message for Mark? I'll make sure he gets the message. Okay? So, very useful phrases for both leaving or taking messages. What about if you're leaving a message on an answering machine? So this is something we have to do a lot, and this is one, like I said, you could have a little script prepared for, which can make it a lot easier. Hello, this is Mark calling. Could you please return my call as soon as possible? My number is 086 whatever. Thank you. Okay? And what about your own answering machine? If you want to record your own answering machine. Hi, this is Mark. I'm sorry I'm not available to take your call. Please leave a message and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. Very simple, very easy. I'm sure you've all heard that before. Okay? And finally, what about finishing a conversation? Well, these are the easiest ones. Thanks for calling. Have a good afternoon, or have a good evening, have a good morning, have a good day, whatever you want to say. I look forward to meeting you. Have a nice day. Okay? So, very simple little things to finish a conversation. Now, a question, guys. Had lots of new phrases and expressions. So, which of these expressions is the most polite if you want to ask someone to leave a message on the phone for somebody? So, which of these is the most polite? Leave a message for Mark. Would you like to leave a message for Mark? You can leave a message. What do you want to say to Mark? So which of these is the most polite, guys? What do we think? What do we think? What do we think? And great work, everyone. Yara, Amar, Khadija, Clara. Exactly. It is, of course, number 2. We know that when we use indirect modal verbs like that, would, it always makes things sound a lot more polite. Okay, so would you like to leave a message for Mark? So great work, everyone who got that correct. I know there was a lot more of you than I mentioned got it correct, but like I said, I can't name everyone out. Now let's move on to our next setting for oral communication, and this is preparing for meetings. Okay, so this is very different than speaking on the phone. This is face to face and often with a lot of important people. So, how can you prepare for meetings? First of all, identify the purpose of the meeting and know what is your role in the meeting. So your role means what are you supposed to be doing in this meeting, okay? Are you giving a presentation? Are you taking the minutes? Okay, are you giving a proposal? So know what your role in the meeting is. Be aware of the goals for the meeting. So, meetings are never just pointless. There's always a reason for a meeting. Whether it's a weekly meeting, whether it's a meeting to organize a partnership. There is always a reason for a meeting. So you, of course, need to be aware of the goals, the aims of the meeting. Know the agenda, so know when it's starting, what's happening first, and what's going to be talked about in the meeting. Know the arrangements for the meeting. So, I shouldn't have to tell you that. You should of course know that you need to find out the date, the time, and the location. So, if you didn't know that and I had to tell you, then maybe there's no hope for you, okay? Because that should be obvious for everyone. Be well prepared, okay? So that is why we are looking through all of these points. Be well prepared. If you have to say something, know what you are going to say. Have bullet points, you can have things written out, but just be well prepared for your role in the meeting. Organize the equipment you need and resources needed. So for example, if you are doing a presentation, make sure you have checked the computer or the projector and you know how to work the equipment. Make sure you've gotten any resources needed. So for example, photocopies, anything printed for the people who are attending the meeting. Because things can always go wrong. So make sure you are as organized and as prepared as possible. Now, some of the vocabulary here. The purpose means the reason for something. So the purpose of the meeting is the reason for the meeting. A goal is an aim or an objective. The agenda is, of course, the schedule or the plan. Arrangements are the plans, so know the plans for the meeting. Well prepared just means well organized. And what are they examples of, guys? Who can tell me from lesson 1? Well prepared and well organized. What are they examples of? Who can be the first one to get that into their question box? So Noah says hyphens, not quite exactly. Exactly. So Gerald is the first person I saw with the correct answer there, and lots of other people, Mahmoud, Mariham, Ali. They are, of course, compound adjectives that we looked at in lesson 1. So very, very good work. I can see all of the answers coming in now. Photocopies are printed handouts, okay? So we call it a photocopier, and it produces photocopies. Now guys, just like we did with the telephone calls, we're going to look at useful expressions for meetings. And of course, let's start at the very, very beginning. So, okay everybody, thank you all for coming, or thanks for coming. Thanks is a little bit less formal, so if it's a formal meeting, you can say thank you all, okay? On the agenda today. So, at the start of the meeting, you can of course tell them what is on the agenda. On the agenda today, we will look at last week's performance and our proposed profits for next year, okay? So tell them what you're going to be talking about in the meeting. Right then, let's get down to business. And that's just a nice way of saying, let's begin. Let's get down to business. Let's start. And then, of course, some sequencing phrases. First of all, secondly, and finally. So when you are talking about the agenda of the meeting, first of all, secondly, and finally. Then we've got during the meeting. Let's keep this meeting fairly brief. Now, brief just means short, okay? So let's keep this meeting fairly brief. Let's keep it fairly short. Let's cover the topics, but let's not drag it out. Let's try keep it short. Any other business just means, does anyone else have anything to add? Any other business? Okay, fairly, Elnura, fairly means quite. So let's keep this meeting Fairly brief, let's keep it quite brief. Let's keep it quite short. Okay? So it's a quantifier, fairly. And we're going to look at quantifiers a little bit later on in the lesson. I have a question. Why did you mention this, for example? So if you have a question in the meeting, don't be afraid. I have a question. Why aren't we talking about the good performances from last week? I agree with Mark. Why aren't we talking about the good performers from last week? In my opinion, I think we should introduce. Can you elaborate on how we are going to do this? Can you clarify that, please? Okay, so there is two nice words there, elaborate and clarify. And we're going to look at what they mean now. But first, let's get down to business. Like I said, that means let's start the meeting. Brief just means short. Any other business means any other issues to discuss. Does anyone have anything else they would like to add? Can you elaborate on means can you explain more? So to elaborate on something means to explain it more. Can you clarify means can you make it clearer? Can you explain more to make it clearer? So they are similar but slightly different. So elaborate just means explain more. Clarify means make it a bit clearer. Now, as we remember, we said feedback was people's reaction to your performance, which is then used as a basis for improvement. So what people say about your work. And it is always good to ask for feedback because we said that feedback is very important. So, what did you think about my presentation? Or what did you think about the meeting? Did you think it was helpful? Asking for feedback. Can you provide feedback on the meeting? Did you find the meeting useful? So that's very good. Did you find the meeting useful? All meetings should be useful. Did the meeting help clarify the current situation? We already saw clarify means to make something clearer. So did the meeting make the current situation clearer? Is there any part of our discussion that you are unsure about? Okay, is there any part of our discussion that you are unsure about, that you do not understand fully? Now, what about providing feedback? So we looked at asking for feedback. What about providing feedback? I thought the presentation went well. You provided great information and I think everyone was impressed. The meeting went well, we covered a lot of information and made some important decisions. Okay, so that's positive feedback. But what if you've got some suggestions or recommendations? Well, overall the presentation went well. Overall the presentation went well, but next time I would recommend. Okay, so if you would do something differently. So you are not offending anyone. You're saying it very diplomatically, okay? You're trying not to hurt anyone's feelings. It's your opinion. Overall, it went well, but next time I would recommend a slight change, okay? I understand the first point, but I am still unclear about the second point. Now, vocabulary. To be impressed means to really enjoy and respect. Okay, so if you really enjoyed something, you were impressed with something. Overall means considering everything. Okay, so overall the presentation went well. Considering everything, the presentation went well. I'm unclear about means I'm unsure about. I still don't fully understand. Okay, so unclear, unsure in this situation almost mean the same thing. Now, guys, another question time. Which of these expressions is the most polite to use in a meeting when you want someone to explain something more? I don't understand. Can you clarify that, please? Can you repeat that? What are you saying? So which of those guys is the most polite? Brilliant work, yeah. Everyone, I don't think I see one wrong answer here, so good work, everyone. As always, Ramya, Nader, Magda, Mohammed, far too people to name, but good work everyone on that. It is, of course, number 2. Can you clarify that, please? So excellent work, everybody, on the questions and the interaction. It's great to see you are all enjoying the lesson and learning some useful phrases. Now, guys, we had a lot of expressional work there and new sentences. So I think we need to break up this lesson with some of my favorite things which you will learn throughout these 4 weeks, guys. It is grammar, okay? Grammar, yes, Mondher already said it before I did. You will learn over the next 3 weeks that grammar is my favorite thing about the English language, and I can already see Bahadine saying, oh no, well don't worry, by the end of this 4 weeks you will love grammar just as much as me. So what we're going to look at first is future tenses for scheduling, organizing, or planning. So we've been looking at phone calls, we've been looking at meetings, and these can always involve scheduling, organizing, or planning events. So let's look at the future tenses we use for these. Ahmed, you may hate grammar now, but you will not hate it by the time you're finished with me, okay? So, what do we use to talk about the future? Very simply, let's start from the start. What do we use to talk about the future? Well, overall, we use 4 different tenses to simply talk about the future. We use the future simple, which I can see a lot of you writing in, and that is, of course, will. Okay, so I will do this. Then we use going to, which I can see Khadija wrote in there, and lots of Yasmin and Mohammed also. We can also use the present continuous to talk about the future, and we can also use the present simple. So these are the main ones we use when talking about scheduling, organizing, or planning. So let's look at the future simple first. Let's start with the one we all know, the first one we learn. So we use the future simple for something you decide in the moment that you are speaking. So in the moment that you are speaking, you decide, I'm going to do that. Okay? In the moment you are speaking. And it takes a very simple form. We have the subject, I, you, he, she, we, the cat, the car, whatever your subject is. Then we use will, and then the infinitive or the base form of the verb. For example, we'll start a new project tomorrow. So you decide in the moment, we'll start a new project tomorrow, and notice the contraction here. We will, we can shorten to we'll. Okay, so we'll start, and then start is the infinitive of the verb. Now, next up, we've got going to. So if we use will for things we decide in the moment of speaking, when do we use going to? What do we think? Brilliant, brilliant. I can see people already typing in planned actions. Exactly, guys. Great work. We use it for plans that are already organized. And form can be a bit confusing at the start, but it's often the most common way to talk about the future. So again, we have the subject, whatever it is, the cat, the dog, the car, me, you, or sorry, not me, I, you, he, she, they. And then we have the verb to be to match the subject. So I am, you are, he is, going to, and then the infinitive of the verb. For example, we're going to have a big meeting with our boss next month. It is a planned action. We are, there's our verb to be, going to, and their infinitive, have. We're going to have a big meeting with our boss next month. Okay? Now, next up, we've got the present continuous. So, when do we use the present continuous when talking about the future? It's a lot like going to. We use it for arrangements or plans already organized, but they're usually very close to now, with a time, a date, or a place. So that's the main thing about the present continuous. It will usually have a time, a date, or a place. Tomorrow, this evening, at 4 o'clock. Okay? And the form, as I'm sure you all know with the present continuous, it's your subject, your verb to be, and then your action verb with ing. For example, I'm meeting a client on Tuesday at 3 p.m. I am, again, am is our verb to be, and then our action verb is meet plus ing. I am meeting a client on Tuesday at 3 p.m. Close to now with a time, a date, or a place. And guys, it's worth noting that sometimes both going to and the present continuous can be used for the same situation. For example, if I said, we are going to a meeting tomorrow morning, okay? We're going to a meeting tomorrow morning. They're being used for the same situation. And finally, we have the present simple. Now guys, how can we use the present simple when talking about the future? What way can that be used? It seems very strange, the present simple being used for the future. And I see a lot of people saying timetables, schedules, plans that are forever. Okay, very good guys. So, we use it for timetables or events that happen regularly or a scheduled event. And we should all know the form of the present simple, subject, and then the present form of the verb. And what does that mean? We add an S for the third person. That's all that means. So we all know how to do the present simple. For example, the bus I take to work departs at 8 a.m. every morning. Okay, so your subject here is the bus I take to work. And then our verb is departs, and we've added an S because it's the third person. We have a meeting after the webinar to discuss attendance, a scheduled event. We have a meeting after the webinar. Okay, so that is the present simple being used to talk about the future, guys. So they are the main ways we would do it, and we use them on the phone or in meetings all of the time. So another question for you guys. Which of these sentences is correct for a meeting which is planned for next week? Okay, so it is planned and it's for next week. I'm going to meet a new client next month. I will meet a new client next week. I'm meeting a new client next week in Paris. I meet a new client next week. So which of these is correct for a meeting which is planned for next week? And I can see a lot of people writing in number 1 and number 2, but they're not correct, guys. Look. Number 1 says next month. Of course, that cannot be correct. Number 2 is using will, and we know that will is not used for planned actions. So that means it's got to be either 3 or 4, and it can't be number 3 because this doesn't even make sense. I meet a new client next week. So the correct answer is number 3. I'm meeting a new client next week in Paris, guys. So well done to everyone who got that question correct. I know a lot of you just may have answered a little too quickly, and that's why you've answered one or two. But I'm sure you all understand why it's correct now, okay? So, I'm not going to name out people who got it wrong, because that's not what we do here, okay? Now, guys, although Kostav is saying I got it wrong, okay? So I've named one person, okay, but I don't generally name people who got it wrong. People are saying I'm stupid. You're not stupid, guys. Don't worry. Don't worry. I purposely made that a difficult question, okay? So, what's up next, guys? We have the last part of our different communication related contexts, and it's making conference calls, guys. So, first of all, how can we improve our conference call technique? So, it's very similar to being on the telephone, but a lot of the time it's visual. They can see you and you're talking to 3 or 4 different people at once, but over a phone call or some sort of online or Skype or something like that. So, you'll notice that a lot of these tips are the same. Be confident, clear, professional, and organized. Be familiar with the technology and features of the conference call software. That's a very important one, guys. Conference call software can be very tricky. What we use here is conference call software. GoToMeeting, GoToWebinar, and it can be very tricky, and things can and usually do go wrong. Okay, so be very comfortable and familiar with the software. Encourage participants, like I do with all of you students, trying to get you to answer and make sure you're awake and not falling asleep on me. Encourage participants to interact. Be punctual, of course. We saw this word in lesson 1. What does punctual mean, guys? Who can tell me? Timely. Okay, that's a very good answer. On time, says Mina. Yes, very good work, BG, on time. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. Be aware of where you are conducting the conference call, i.e. your location. So, if they can see you, don't do the conference call somewhere where there's a lot of movement in the background. Make sure you're not somewhere where there'll be a lot of background noise, okay? So just be aware of where you are conducting, where you are making the conference call. Follow the agenda, of course. Use visual aids where necessary to help the discussion. So if you've got graphs, if you've got a presentation, use visual aids where necessary. Take notes, of course. If you are listening to someone else speak, take notes. Keep the call brief. We saw that brief just means short, okay? So, keep the call brief. Cover what needs to be covered in a short amount of time. Don't drag it out, as we say. So, some of the vocabulary here. Encourage participants means motivate the individuals. To conduct a call is to make a call. Take notes means write down key information. Brief means short. Okay? So as we've seen for a lot of the expressions, keep it short, keep it brief. Now guys, what we're going to do again, let's look at some helpful expressions for the conference calls, okay? So at the beginning of the conference call, are we all logged in? Can everybody hear me? Just like I do at the beginning of these webinars. Did everybody get the agenda? So if you have sent out an agenda via email or anything like that, did everybody get the agenda? Our main aim today is, let's keep the call brief. So let them know you're going to keep the call brief. We'll just wait a few minutes before we start. If you do have to wait for someone else, say it. We'll just wait a few minutes before we start. There are a number of issues that we need to address today. And that means there are several topics to discuss today. The first item on the agenda is. The next item on the agenda is. We'll leave that topic to another meeting. The line or connection is bad today. Could you speak more slowly, please? The line is bad. Okay, so like we had on the phone call also. Could you speak more slowly, please? The line is bad. Now, what about during the call? I'm afraid I didn't catch that. And that, of course, just means I didn't hear what you said. I don't follow you. What exactly do you mean? Could you explain that in another way? I'm sorry, I don't understand the word. Clarify. What does it mean? Mark, could you repeat that, please? Could we have some more details, please? Have I made that clear? I'm positive that. I recommend that. Mark, can we get your input? So if you want someone specifically to interact, Mark, can we get your input? Like if I said to one of you guys, can I get your input? How do you feel about, or what do you think about? That's interesting. I never thought about it that way before. Good point, or I get your point. I see what you mean. Okay, I see what you mean. I totally agree with you. And what about at the end of the webinar? Can I add something quickly? I'd like to add something. Are we ready to make a decision about? Well, that's everything important covered. Any other business? Okay? A lot of people asking about input. Input just means your opinion, guys. Your opinion. And I'm positive means I'm sure that. But we're going to look at these here. So more details, please, means extra information. I'm positive that means I'm sure or I'm certain that. I recommend that means I suggest or I propose. Your input means your ideas or thoughts. I get your point is, of course, I understand what you are saying. Or we could say, I see what you mean. It means the same thing. Any other business, we've seen this already, means any other matters to discuss. Okay? So lots of useful phrases there for conference calls. And don't forget that if I went a little bit too fast through those, you can always watch the recordings again or access them through your toolkits if you've purchased it. So guys, which of these sentences could be used to talk about the first topic on the agenda during a conference call? The agenda is, we don't have an agenda. The first item on the agenda is, what's the agenda? So, which of those could be used to talk about the first topic, guys? Exactly, that was a nice, easy question. So, good work, everyone there. It is, of course, number 3. The first item on the agenda is. Okay, so that was a very easy one for all of you, I think. And guys, let's wrap all that up. We've looked at telephone calls, meetings, and conference calls with some general language tips. So let's summarize these language tips. Be formal and polite. Remember, intonation is important. Now, what does intonation, guys? It is raising or lowering your voice. So, for example, if I gave the webinar like this, be formal and polite. Intonation is important. Example, raising or lowering your voice. Now, is that something you would like to listen to? Is that something anyone would like to listen to? I don't exactly think so. Okay, so intonation is important. Now, it doesn't mean you need to have a high voice or you need to have a low voice, but it just means using your intonation. Okay, so for example, if it's a question, you raise the tone at the end. So, what do you guys think? Okay, when you're asking a question. So, that is what we mean by intonation. Contractions. Remember, in oral communication, we would use contractions. I will becomes I'll. I am becomes I'm. Okay? When we are communicating orally, we use these contractions a lot. Okay? Use modal verbs to make your speech more formal. Have to, must, should. If you use a bit, a little, quite, or a few, you can make your sentence sound more polite, okay? Now, these are what we call quantifiers. A bit, a little, quite, a few, fairly, we saw earlier. And these are quantifiers, and that's what we're going to look at next, guys. We're going to wrap up this lesson with a bit of grammar. Some quantifiers, guys. What better way to finish off today's lesson? So, when do we use quantifiers? We use them to give information about the quantity of something. So they are called quantifiers, and we use them to give information about the quantity. What that means, how much or how many, the number or the amount. Okay? So, examples from the previous slide: a bit, a little, quite, or a few. Now, as we all know, we can have countable nouns and uncountable nouns, and we can have different quantifiers to use with both. But first of all, let's look at the easy quantifiers that we can use with both countable and uncountable nouns. We've got all, any, enough, less, a lot of, more, most of, no, none of, some, quite, very, too, so. Okay, so these can be used with both countable and uncountable nouns. So, for example, I have too many expenses this month. I allocated so much time to the project. I was given quite a few projects to complete. Okay, so we have expenses, which is a countable noun, time, which as we all know is uncountable, and projects, which are countable. So we can see that these can be used for both. So remember, a countable noun just means a noun you can count. Like books. 1 book, 2 books. An uncountable noun is something that we cannot count like that. We cannot say 1 money or 2 money. Okay, it's uncountable, just like water or time. Now, let's look at examples for the specific nouns. So, countable quantifiers. And of course, the one we all know is many. When we are talking about something countable, we use many. How many books? How many books do you have? And that is the most common one. But we've also got the rest of these. A number of, both, a couple of, each, every, either, neither, fewer. Okay, so there's lots of these. And of course, examples here, we have a large number of clients. Client being a countable noun. The company has several new ideas. Again, ideas are countable. Then we've got uncountable quantifiers. And what's the main uncountable quantifier that everyone uses? We use many for countable. What do we use for uncountable? The majority of the time, guys. Who is exactly? Brilliant work, brilliant work, brilliant work. It's great to see so many of you are still listening so intently. The main one is much. If we were asking about books, we would say how many books. If we were asking about water, we would say how much water. Okay? For example, I have quite a bit of money saved. I have little time to finish the project. Okay? So these are uncountable quantifiers. Now guys, a question for you. Which of these is not a quantifier? Too much, quite a lot of, good, a little bit, so many. Brilliant work. Great to see you all answering questions this late into the webinar. It is, of course, good. Good is not a quantifier. What type of word is good, guys? It's certainly not a quantifier. It is exactly, guys, it's an adjective. Great work. Absolutely fantastic. You're all interacting so much on the webinar. It's great to see. So, guys, the last of our topics, and don't worry, it's only a short, very short topic that we're going to cover, and then that is lesson 2 finished, guys. We are going to look at the first conditional. Now, when do we use the first conditional? And what is a conditional, guys? What's the first thing we know about conditionals? And it's a small little word that we use. So who can tell me? Brilliant work. Mido was the first one I saw with the answer there. If. Okay? When you see the word if, you know it's a conditional clause. So when do we use the first conditional? And this is something that can confuse not only non-native speakers, but even native speakers. So, when do we use the first conditional? Because we have lots of different types. We use it for real situations that are very possible. So, it's the most common one. An example sentence from the previous slide: if you use a bit, a little, quite, a few, or very well, you can make your sentence sound more polite and softer. So all of these conditionals have 2 clauses, okay? Your conditional and your resultant, okay? So let's look at the structure. If plus the present simple, and that's your conditional, comma, and then will or can plus the infinitive of the verb. That is your resultant clause. So you've got your conditional clause, a comma, and your resultant clause, and that is the form of it. But let's look at an example. If I negotiate well, I will come to an agreement, or I can come to an agreement, okay? That is an example of our first conditional. But can anyone tell me this? What if we start the sentence with the resultant clause? Does anything change? So what if we have the resultant clause and then the conditional clause? Can anyone tell me what we change? Brilliant work, guys. Lots of people. Some people are asking, is it possible? It is very possible. And as a lot of you have said, Allah, Ammar, Muhammad, great work. We removed the comma. Okay? So it's perfectly okay. We can say, I will come to an agreement if I negotiate well, but we remove the comma. If the conditional is in the middle of the sentence, we remove the comma. So great work on that, guys. And we're going to look at a lot more of the conditionals in lesson 3 next week. Okay? So guys, that brings us to the end of the lesson, which just gives us time for the class interaction. Now, how the class interaction works, guys, is I'm going to ask you a question and I don't want it to be answered here in the webinar. You can answer me over on Twitter by tweeting me the correct answer, or on my YouTube channel. And what this does is encourages not only me to interact with you guys, but you to interact with each other on the YouTube channel and on Twitter. Because the more you practice your English, the better you get at it. So guys, which of these is not an example of the first conditional? And there is your 5 options, okay? So you can screenshot this if you need to, or take a picture of it, because I don't want the answer now. As I said, I want you to either tweet that answer to me or get in touch with me on the YouTube channel. So I want to know which of these is not an example of the first conditional. make sure to screenshot it or get your picture in now. And then you'll get the answer by my video, which I will put on my personal Twitter and on my YouTube channel, guys. So my personal Twitter handle is @ShawAcademy EFB, or my YouTube channel, which is Shaw Academy English for Business, guys. So I will put up a video with the answer to that, and then I will also have some other fun little interactions in that video. So make sure you check them out, and I'll usually put them up tomorrow. So that's it for tonight's lesson, and let's just summarize what we learned. So we learned about communication related contexts in the workplace. You gained confidence and improved your telephone manner. You learned how to prepare for meetings. You explored the future tenses and quantifiers. You honed your conference call technique, and you explored the first conditional. So guys, now you can continue building your English for Business, and make sure to attend all of the lessons live, because I think you'll agree it's the best way to interact and get your your questions answered in real time. But remember that we are here to help, so you can contact us anytime. That's my email address, and that's my associate Tom's. He is the person writing one of the many people in our English for Business team writing those answers to you in the question boxes. So you can contact us anytime you like. If you are a Shaw Academy member already with us, then some further learning, I would recommend any of these lessons. So lesson 1 of the career advancement, lesson 3 of fast track business success, or lesson 6 in psychology of sales. So if you'd like to know any more about oral communication, and that's some further learning for you guys. Remember guys, we have the toolkit available in your members area. You can purchase it for only €19.99. And what that includes is the webinar slides for every lesson. So you cannot download the lessons, guys. Nobody can, because they are copyrighted by Shaw Academy. So if you want to see all of those useful phrases and have a copy of them for yourself, you can get them with the webinar slides in the toolkit, and you'll also have the summary notes for every lesson. And this can be purchased in your members area. Okay, I also upload bonus videos throughout the course, and these can be fun learning experiences. So guys, if you want to make the best of this English for Business course, I would recommend getting that toolkit. Now, what about the next lesson? And it is part 2 of our communication skills, the art of negotiation. So lesson 3 next week. This is what we have to look forward to. You'll learn about the art of negotiation, and you'll gain confidence and improve your ability to negotiate. You'll learn how to prepare for meetings involving negotiation, and then in the grammar you will study the conditional tenses. We'll also look at an international case study, and of course lots more business terminology and my pronunciation that I do try my hardest with. So remember guys, attend all of the lessons live, as it's the best way to learn. And we offer the incentive, because remember, in lesson 6 we will be giving away that fantastic lifetime membership to the Shaw Academy to one lucky student with great attendance. The recording of this lesson will be available within 24 hours, and remember, to access the recordings you just go to shawacademy.com, and then in the top right corner you click on your members area. Okay, so guys, that only leaves us with time for the questions and answers round. So what I am going to do, I'm going to get a quick drink of water, because it can take it out of my voice when I'm talking for this long. So keep typing in those questions if you still have questions you need to ask. If you don't have any questions you need to ask, then I will see you next week for lesson 3. But keep getting those questions in, and I will answer as many as possible when I come back after getting some water for myself, okay? So I'll be back in less than a minute, guys. Okay, guys, I am back and I'm ready to answer as many questions as possible. So let us see. What is terminology? Mohammed is asking. Terminology just means like new vocabulary. Okay, so business terminology, it means terms we would use in business. So, for example, profit, okay, or loss, clients, okay, client relations. These are terms we would use in business. So that's what we mean by terminology, business terminology. Okay. How can I improve my language in general? Okay, that's the magic question that everyone always asks, and the best way to do it is just immerse yourself in the language. That is the best and only way to do it. So try use English as much as possible. Try listening to the news in English. Try listening to English music, watching English movies, talking to as many people as you can in English. That's what we call immersing yourself in the language. Ahmed, pronunciation is how you pronounce something. So the correct pronunciation of a word. So, for example, it is not pronunciation, it's pronunciation. So, it's how we pronounce words. Pronunciation. Okay. No, Elnura, we spell immerse Immerse. Okay, immerse. So to immerse yourself in something. Immerse. Okay. Let's see. Yes, exactly, Elnura. Exactly. Amar is asking, does reading short stories improve English? Everything improves your English. Anytime you use English, it improves it. Even if you are talking to other non-native speakers and not using perfect English, you're still improving your fluency. So you are still improving a part of your language. So fluency means like your flow, your confidence in when you speak. Okay, so everything helps you with your language. Okay, Iman is asking what negotiation or what negotiating means. Okay, you can wait for lesson 3 for that, Iman, because we are going to learn every single thing about negotiation. Okay, so don't worry about that right now. We're going to cover it in the next lesson. Let's see. And okay, Hassan is saying, how can I fight the fear that comes when I attend any meeting or discussion appointment with people? Okay, well, the main things I would say, Hassan, of course, practice will help fight that fear. The more practice you have, the better you will become. But also be prepared. if you are as prepared as you can be, that will fight some of the fear because you'll know what you're going to talk about. And through this course and the terminology we learn, that will help you in these situations. Okay? So, you will get better, and I mean, you will learn to fight the fear. You'll get a bit more confident. Okay. People are asking about logging into the members area. Guys, I would recommend all of you to try and log into the members area just to make sure you are familiar with it, because the members area is where you access the recordings and the assignments. So everyone should try log in to the members area. If you've forgotten your password, there's a little button there you can click that says forgot password, and then they will email you out a new password to get in. So I would recommend all of you to try that, okay? Because there's a lot of things in your members area that will help you throughout the course. Okay, Mohammed is saying, how can I be professional in giving presentations? Well, luckily for you, Mohammed, if you have that toolkit, I have a bonus video on giving presentations which I'll be putting into the toolkit next week. Okay, Amar, if you're being told your password is not correct, just click on the forgot password button there, and they should email you your password. Okay, Bahadeen is saying, I said in a previous slide that well prepared means well organized, but I think well prepared means to be ready for any encountering issue. What do you think? Bahadeen, I agree with you. Of course, I agree with you. Well prepared and well organized are different in meanings, but what I meant was in that context, they meant the same thing. So that was, in that context, we were talking about being ready for meetings. So in that context, they meant the same thing. They had the same meaning. But yes, in general, well prepared means to be ready for anything that could come at you, whereas well organized just means to have everything in order. Okay? But remember, meanings can be slightly different in different contexts, so you always have to remember that. Okay. Let's see. Okay, Mustafa, I don't understand simple present in future. Could you repeat that briefly? Okay, Mustafa. For example, if I said, I start work every day at 8 a.m. That is every day. It's a schedule, it's a timetable. That means I'm talking about the past. I'm also talking about the present, but I'm also talking about the future. So I am still talking about the future. I start work every day at 8 a.m. I'm talking about all of the time. Past, present, future. So that is one way. We also use it for scheduled events. For example, the meeting is at 9 a.m. Okay? So, is, we know, is the present simple of the verb be. The meeting is at 8 a.m. Or, for example, we have a meeting at 8 a.m. So, for scheduled events, we can use the present simple to talk about them. Okay? Of course, you can still use the other methods, like the present continuous. But that is how we would use them. Okay. Muhammad is asking how many are in this webinar now? Well, a lot of people always leave before the question and answers if they don't need to stay here, Muhammad. But at the moment there's over 100 anyway. Okay, put it that way. There's over 100 because a lot leave when the question and answers round comes if they don't need to know any of the answers. Okay, so guys, we've been going on for an hour and 25 minutes now. So I'm going to bring this webinar to a close. Remember, if you want to watch it again, it will be in your members area tomorrow. We record every lesson. Check out the members area because your first assignment will be going into your members area on Friday. And guys, thank you all so much for joining me again live and sticking around and all your fabulous questions. And I can't wait to see you all for lesson 3, where we look at the second part of our communication skills, which is the art of negotiating. So guys, everyone have a fantastic weekend. Make sure to immerse yourself in the English language, and I'll see you all for lesson 3. Goodbye and have a good evening.